and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and when I was a kid, my mother told me not to stare into the sun. So when I was 6, I did it.
And I'm Matt Freeman, and have you ever heard of the Kabbalah?
Yeah, that's the one that Madonna did.
Yeah.
That's like my entire knowledge of Kabbalah is Madonna got really into it.
I'm sure we'll talk about the Kabbalah some today.
Oh, I'm sure we will. This week on the show, we are doing another one of our patron-produced episodes. For those of you that don't know, folks that pledge to us at the Doof Warrior level or above on Patreon, that's patreon.com/doofmedia, get to select a movie or a short story for us to do a show on. This week, our patron Youssef asked us to take a look at Darren Aronofsky's debut 1998 film, Pi. So we're going to be talking about Pi.
Yeah. It's gonna be good. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be a full spoilers discussion of Pi. It's one of those episodes where I think it's one of those movies really where I cannot imagine talking about this movie trying to like withhold spoilers. I don't know how we would do that.
Absolutely agree.
And then we're gonna finish the episode up with a short Matt discussion about the latest Star Wars film. We did not want to do a full episode covering that film because Matt and I don't like it, and we didn't feel. Matt raised this point to me, and I thought it was a good one, that having an episode where it's just two of us talking about how much we didn't like something feels a little off-brand for us. So we still wanted to talk about it a little bit, but not a whole episode. Too much.
Yeah, trying to ring in the new decade with just unmitigated positivity.
Yeah,
so.
With unmitigated positivity, with just a little bit of negativity there.
Yeah, a little mitigated maybe.
Yeah. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into Pi.
1245. Restate my assumptions. 1. Mathematics is the language of nature. 2. Everything around us can be represented and understood through numbers. 3. If you graph the numbers of any system, patterns emerge. Therefore, there are patterns everywhere in nature.
Matt, did you attempt to explain this movie?
Sure. This movie is about a mathematician who is doing research on number theory, studying pi. He discovers some secret, some number that has some profound meaning, and he is then pursued. He's basically being hounded by both these hyper-religious Hasidic Jews and also these I guess they're hedge fund managers or something, and investment people basically. But both groups trying to use him to get this magical number, which contains basically the secret of the universe, and it's the story of this guy's struggle with the infinite. And it's actually about 7 other things too on different thematic levels. But I think that's kind of the most superficial and plot-y level, which is interesting because I still think that's an awesome level on which to think about the story. Just what it appears to be and not even talking about the deeper meaning. It's already plenty deep on the surface. And I really think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think there is a lot going on here. This is, as we said, Darren Aronofsky's. Do you watch movies with Mikey?
Yeah, frequently.
He did an episode on Aronofsky's The Fountain, and when he did that episode, every time in that episode he said Darren Aronofsky, he did it in a sing-songy voice, Darren Aronofsky. And so every time I say his name, that plays in my head. So just know that every time I say Aronofsky in my head, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But this is his very first movie. This is a very, very low budget film. I think it cost $60,000 to make. And he ended up selling it for $1 million, which is pretty damn impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's filmed completely guerrilla style. So they had no permits, no licensing. If you're seeing them on a subway, they're sneaking on and hoping they don't get caught. And it's very simple. It is we've talked, you and I have talked about many of these auteur directors. We've never really talked about Aronofsky in a lot of detail, but there's something similar with the way a lot of these people start with their first film, which is this very low budget but high concept idea, and that is what Pi is, 100%.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I love Aronofsky. I had seen Pi before, so this this was sort of a rewatch for me, I guess, even though I hadn't seen it in many years. So in a certain sense, it was like a fresh take.
Sure.
So I guess you could say I kind of knew what the plot was and where it was going, but I had forgotten almost all the individual scenes. So that was cool.
Yeah, and for my part, I love Aronofsky. I had not seen this movie, but I have seen every single other one of his movies, and I thought I had seen this movie. This is one of those things where if you had asked me a week ago, have you seen Pi? I'd have been like, yeah, totally. And then I started watching and I was like, wait, nuh-uh. But I love Aronofsky. I think my favorite of his movies is still The Fountain. But I also loved Mother that came out a few years ago. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's a
Still
trippy
haven't.
film. But so this was a first time experience for me, and I loved it. I loved it as a film standing on its own. I loved it as this avant-garde kind of experimental filmmaking by a guy that has very little money. And I loved it as kind of a way of seeing the filmmaker that Aronofsky becomes, because I saw so much of what he thinks about and the way he makes movies and the types of stories he wants to talk about in this movie. It made me want to do a deconstructing director series on Aronofsky, and maybe we'll do that one day.
Yeah, I had the same thought. But it's interesting because I didn't know all that stuff about it being so cheaply made, and I guess it makes sense. But while you're watching it, you're not thinking like, oh, this is a pretty good movie for a really cheaply made, piece of garbage.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, this is so artistic, and I'm completely absorbed in this. Like, I think that's kind of the remarkable thing about it is, I think a lot of like very cerebral and film school-y movies are just boring, and this one is extremely riveting and makes you uncomfortable. Like, I don't know, I speak to me for myself, like I all of the like headache sequences made me so like physically uncomfortable and upset, because he uses the sound and the music and obviously the acting of the performer, but also like what the camera is doing and the kind of rapid cutting and changing lights to give you this horrible sense of like you're experiencing this suffering. And that really struck a chord with me, and it was really powerful.
I was watching this, it was the middle of the day yesterday, and my dog was sleeping on my lap and just kept getting woken up by the noise of those headache sequences. It's this very shrill, disturbing noise that I'm sure to a dog was even louder than it was for us. But I agree. I think, the only movie I've been with my wife to that she like absolutely hated and wanted to walk out of was Mother. And it's not even because like the source material, it's just like the way he films the movie. It's like this very like overwhelming visceral style. And I mean, he's always done that. Like that's the way he's done it. And now I know from the beginning, because you're absolutely right. In this movie, the way he films those headache sequences and then some of the delusion sequences later in the movie are just like very taking all the different methods, sound, camera movement, light, and just really attacking all your senses with it. It's trying to drive you not crazy. It's trying to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's trying to kind of get you in the mind space of the character who's suffering through this stuff. And in that, I absolutely think it succeeds. And I know that for a fact because my wife, who refused to watch this movie because I told her it was by the guy who made Mother, was like doing stuff in the background, and she's like, this hurts, stop. Turn it off.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about specific to the visual quality of the picture is I feel like, and I can't really substantiate whether this is true or whether this is just my perception or whether this was intentional or unintentional or what, but like the graininess of the picture actually changes quite a lot depending on what's happening. So it's all black and white. I don't know if we said that yet, but it's all black and white. But it's not just black and white. Like, it's not just like, oh, this is just a black and white film. Like, it's this very stylized, highly grainy black and white where it's almost like somebody took black and white film and then passed it through like some noise filter to just generate a bunch of extra crumminess to the image. And in some scenes, the graininess is far worse, to the extent that like you feel like you're looking at like white with like stippling black dots on it to paint the picture. And then in some scenes, it just is almost passable as just like a normal black and white movie. And I don't know if this is like a post-processing thing or if this is like a film thing or a lighting thing, perhaps. I really have no idea to what degree this was like a decision versus like, that's just what happens when you film certain things. I mean, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, this was filmed in high contrast. So, which means like the contrast between the colors is more evident. Like the whites get a little whiter, the blacks in the film get a lot blacker. But it's also, it was reverse film. So normally, like when you film something, it produces a negative and then you print off the negative. But in reverse film, it produces a positive instead. And I don't know a lot about it. I think it's a way of like saving money, but I also think it does get the kind of graininess that you're talking about there. It is, it is just a method of recording the image that is a little bit different and gets some of that graininess. And of course, like this was filmed on, I think it was 35 millimeter film. So that adds to it as well, that this is, this is 98. This is before digital got big. And then also like they probably didn't have the most expensive cameras in the world.
Yeah.
So I think all that, and it's one of those things, and I think we've talked about this on the show before, but it's one of those things that like you work with the stuff you get, but then you build that into what your art is, right? So like the decision to make a black and white film might have just been, this will be cheaper. Black and white film does not cost as much as full color film. It doesn't cost as much to print. Maybe we didn't have access to the camera or the film we needed to. But a talented artist will take those limitations and build them into it. And it being in black and white, it being grainy, as you've already talked about, these limitations that might just have been literally, this is all we had to work with, becomes part of the artistic direction of the film. And in this, I think it works perfectly. Well,
I think like the beginning and the ending of the movie are both him sitting on this bench looking up at the tree through the light, and so you immediately see like the light and the interaction of these semi-translucent leaves with the light has now become this visual touchstone for the film. And I don't think that would have looked anything near the same if it hadn't been black and white. Like the fact that there's no color to it makes it very clear that that we're supposed to be paying attention to like the fractal nature of the leaves and the light filtering through them. And even that is a metaphor. I would say like a visual metaphor of like the light of God filtering through the pattern of reality or something like that. And I don't think I'm being ridiculous in making leaps like that, because that is basically what the movie's about.
No, I totally agree with you. I think I that metaphor that you just illustrated there had not occurred to me, but the second you said it, I was like, fuck yeah. Because I think that's great. And I do think the black and white and the high contrast black and white, right? Like it's accentuating the differences, the line between the blacks and the whites in the film, really bring out this kind of duality and this general idea of this guy, like there's order and chaos, right? Like these two things are kind of competing with each other in this film. Our main character is obsessed with looking at the seemingly chaos of the universe and is obsessed with finding order to it. That behind all this, somewhere there is a pattern. There is something that makes sense. And I think the duality of those colors help accentuate that as well in a way that color photography would not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, just to one more comment about the black and white, and so like you've got scenes like where he's talking to his mentor, for example, where you genuinely just kind of forget this is black and white. You're just like, yeah, I'm just watching a movie. The picture looks pretty normal. You're not paying any attention to that. Oh, by the way, they're playing Go, which is using black and white stones.
Yeah.
But then contrast this with like the part of the movie where he's being chased by two different groups of people through the streets. And there are many parts of that where you're just like, I have no idea. Like what am I looking at? Like, I have a really nice TV. So the fact that I have no idea what I'm looking at is clearly, I don't want to say intentional, but like there's no way to figure out what you're looking at if I can't tell what I'm looking at. So it's like, it's supposed to be wildly disorienting. Like everything is like pure black and pure white, and he's running through the store and the camera is like bouncing around. It like, you have to believe that this is being filmed by like the cameraman, like chasing him, running through the aisles of this convenience store.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think it absolutely isn't. I think intentional is a fair word because what the high contrast does is the whites drown in the white color and the blacks disappear, right? So like when you have intense light coming into the camera on high contrast, it like washes everything that's lit out, and everything that's dark gets so dark that you can't see any detail in there. And it is disorienting. It absolutely is, because you can't tell what's going on. And I'm fine with you using the word intentional there, because that is a aesthetic decision they made or was forced upon them that, like we said, they worked into the film.
Yeah, and I did like it. I wanted to kind of talk about how it was a very disorienting part of the movie, and I think you and maybe others have read into what all of that means. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's all. Those are all the specific points that I wanted to make about the black and whiteness of it, which I think it did merit a bit of a discussion, because it's more than just like, yeah, they went black and white because it's cheaper. It's like, no, it mattered artistically. So.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So okay, I'm trying to figure out how to break this down story wise, though, because we got to talk about the story of where the movie goes and the themes of it, which are complex. So I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about in a movie obsessed with a guy obsessed with patterns, one of the things I most appreciated with the aesthetic of the movie is how pattern driven it is. You know, there are repeating beats over and over again throughout the movie, and they're very visceral repeating beats. Like the first one that springs to mind is his pattern of unlocking his door, right? And how that is both visually and audibly this thing that we hear very brutally. Like it's almost as if the mix turns up the sound of the metal sliding through the chain thing to really accentuate the noise of the unlocking. And that is something that repeats again and again throughout the movie. And there's patterns like that all throughout it.
Yeah, it's a very Aronofsky thing to do, right? To have this both visual and sonic touchstone. So yeah, there's the pills, which is something that we'll see in that other movie.
No, fuck, what's it called?
something Sunshine, right? No.
Oh
Damn it.
This is embarrassing.
I totally had it on the tip of my tongue, and then whatever. We'll
Requiem
think
for a Dream.
Requiem for a Dream.
Yes.
I don't know why both of us went to
Eternal Sunshine.
Eternal Sunshine. Yeah. There's I mean, structurally, there's repeating like sections, right? There's he kind of always starts it out with like, and maybe you would say it starts at a different place, but like restate my assumptions, and then he goes and he works on his number theory, and then he talks to his mentor. And then his hand starts shaking, and then he has a headache sequence, and then he has a vision, and then he wakes up with a bloody nose. So there's more stuff in there, but like that sort of sequence of events happens like 3 times.
I would argue it starts with the thing we started the episode with, which is the story about when I was a kid, my mother told me not to stare into the sun. So I did.
Sure.
And that is something that repeats, I think, 3 times throughout the movie as well. And his story changes a little bit. I mean, the beginning of the story is different, but the results of that morph over the course of the movie. He goes further with that story, but it's just a great way of declaring the character, right? It's like the first thing we learn about this character is when I was a kid, my mom told me not to do something, so I did it.
Right.
I did it right away, and then this happened to me, and now ever since I've had these headaches, and it goes on from there. But I think that's a great way of establishing the character, and it also establishes our beat pattern thing. But then, then it goes to his state your assumptions, state your hypothesis. It's very clinical in that way.
Yeah, I think
math.
That first line may be one of my favorite first like spoken lines of a film, because like you just said, it's not my mother told me not to stare at the sun, but I did anyway. It's so I did. Like if you tell me what to do, I'm going to do the opposite. Like that's the kind of person he is. He's this very disagreeable person who's going to do his thing his way, and he's constantly pushing back against people, even people who are even like the neighbor who does seem to genuinely just want to help him and likes him and is not trying to use him in any way. He constantly is kind of in conflict with her in a sense.
Yeah, and that's like the entire relationship with his mentor that we see in the movie with Saul. Like every time he meets him, he's telling a parable about like a warning parable about some ancient mythological story. Like I think it's Icarus, and then what is the other one?
I forget.
It's the measuring of volume.
Yeah, Archimedes.
Archimedes, thank you.
Which I thought was hilarious because like you also think he's gonna like the moral of the story says the moral of the story is listen to your wife and take a bath. It's like that's hilarious. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, but I love his answer to the story is the problem, like my breakthrough will come. And it's just like a complete misreading of everything. And I think their relationship is really fascinating to me because we also, Aronofsky uses Go and the game and each of the characters' interpretations of the game to define their life philosophy, right? Because his mentors is like, look at this, like there's infinite possibilities. There's no way any two games of this will be exactly alike. So how can you ever hope to plot any kind of pattern through this?
Yeah.
And his response is, well, the longer we play, the less possibilities there are. Ergo, no, I think there is. And that is just a perfect way of using Go to distill their philosophies. Like, I know nothing about Go beyond that it's a game with like black and white stones and it's really complex. But that's one thing I think is cool about the movie is I don't know a lot about mathematics. I don't know a lot about Go. I don't know a lot about Jewish faith and the Kabbalah, but the movie gives you just enough to where you catch on to the story without needing to be an expert in any of these things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like I know a lot more about all of those things than I did the first time I saw the movie, but I still think I understood the movie the first time I saw the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
The Go part to me was kind of like I don't know what emotion to assign to this, but like I thought it was really fascinating how certainly the first time I saw this movie they had not like machine learning had not beaten humans at Go. Like Go was still this thing where it was like robots will never beat us at Go. It's this an infinitely subtle game and completely unpredictable. And like now we basically have machines that can predict even the best players in the world at Go. So this idea that it's too complex, it'll never ever be predicted. Like we've now done it. So
right.
Max is actually right.
Yeah, that is interesting that time has showed that Soul is not right.
Yeah.
And maybe I mean, that's one of the things that I think is fascinating about the movie, and we'll get to the end eventually, but like this idea that, you know, it doesn't actually, it says the opposite of the fact that Max is wrong. The movie says he's right. But just that knowledge, that awareness is destructive in and of itself.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea that I picked up from the movie this time is like, when you conceive of yourself as being just part of the spiral, part of the pattern, you realize that you have no control over anything. You're just a figment floating in the stream or what have you, and it kind of breaks you. And you can phrase it in religious terms as like man is not meant to see everything and know everything. Like it's like an ant becoming super intelligent or something. It would just destroy them. And that's basically what happens. And that's his decision at the end. Maybe I did read that slightly different this time, where like, I think the first time I saw this movie, I read that as like, oh, it's driven him mad and now he's going to drill his head out. And this time it's very clear that this is like him knowing this truth and realizing that mankind is not meant to have this. And you can make it religious, you can make it mathematics, you can make it either one really. And his decision is like, I was chosen, and being the chosen one, I am deciding that mankind was not meant to have this, and he destroys it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an accurate read, because I love the end of the movie when the girl walks up to him again and repeats the pattern that we've seen before of just asking him to solve these complex problems and checking his math. And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And of course, it's beautiful that the last question she asks him is dividing 748 by 238, which is just about pi.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's 3.14 something. It's close enough. But he's just like, I don't know. And he doesn't care anymore. He's learned something. I think that's a great way to ending it. And I like what you said about through the different characters that interact with him, we see maybe the different aspects on this thing. We see the spiritual, religious side through the people trying to discover God through this number. But on the other side, we see kind of the capitalist, commercial side of trying to take this and use it for fame and fortune kind of side. And the realization here is that, like, we're not meant to have the number maybe from a religious standpoint, but also from, like, that's too much power in the hands of one person, and it will be immediately, like, the world will try to swallow and abuse you and consume you and just use that knowledge for its own benefit.
Right, because it's almost darkly funny that he has this number is basically implied to be like Kabbalistically like a name of God that would allow you to just know all, and they want to use it to pick stocks.
Right.
It's farcical because it's like you'd basically be godlike if you could harness the power of this number, this name of God, and you want to use it to pick stocks and make money for yourself, and that's like this huge indictment of humanity, basically. Like, that's basically about right. That's about what we would do with this.
But isn't it interesting that is his, at the beginning, that is his goal? And like, the funny thing about it to me is it never seems, from my understanding of this character, that he's picked the stock market because he wants to make a lot of money. Like, I think it's even specifically says that he doesn't play the stock market. Like, he is not actually participating in the buying and selling of stocks. He just looks at this as an example of chaos in the universe that I want to get a handle on. But it is interesting that the thing he picks is money, is this commercial side of this. Like, it's not this, I want this greater understanding of the universe. I want this holistic approach to what existence is, making order out of chaos. The way he picks that is through the financial sector.
Yeah, it is this very worldly thing. I do think that's interesting. Part of me does wonder if they just picked that because it lends itself to film. Like,
could be, yeah.
Showing the ticker, showing the numbers, and then being like, because where else in the world do you predict numbers? I mean, I guess you could like get a table of barometric pressures from somewhere or something, but like it just kind of facilitates the storytelling for it to be. I'm not saying you're wrong. I think it definitely is an interesting choice that he was trying to predict this particularly worldly pattern when there are so many other things you could try to predict.
I agree, though, from like a screenwriting perspective, where you're like, how do we cinematically show this? Like, how do we show to him that, oops, you were wrong, and actually your computer's working and has found this number. The stock dropping crazily when it shouldn't have is a great way of doing that. So yeah. I agree that that's probably a good screenwriting perspective, but I do think it says something about the themes of the movie that's where we begin.
Yeah.
And of course the stock people, the Wall Street people, take that to its furthest, but
sure. Yeah. I don't necessarily want to swerve from talking about the number magic stuff. But like, and we did kind of talk about how unsettling and unnerving the filmmaking is, but I just wanted to talk about kind of the body horror for a second. Cause I mean, even for this podcast, I think we've watched way more like body horror intensive movies.
Yeah.
But I was way more like discomfited by him having the headaches and then like clawing at the side of his head and then revealing this. And really, it's like a very subtle and small little like imperfection on the side of his head. And you're like, it's horrifying. It's so like, I was like writhing in my seat, and really it's kind of nothing compared to some of the Cronenberg stuff that I've seen, you know. It's barely even body horror, but just like the idea of it, I think, is what's so horrifying.
Sure. Do you know what the symbol is? Is it anything, or is it just like a gross looking vein thing?
I didn't think to look it up. Now that you ask, I kind of want to say it's probably Hebrew.
Yeah,
but I actually have no idea. I didn't even think about it until now.
I'm looking it up right now, so you have to vamp while I'm doing this.
Okay. Yeah, so one cool thing, like the first time I watched it, I don't remember my reaction exactly, but specifically to the dream sequences, I don't remember if I liked them or if I thought they were annoying, because it's very easy to get annoyed by dream sequences if they're just like a bunch of chaos. Mm-hmm. This time though, since I kind of knew the direction the movie was going, I was like, the dream sequences all make sense. I get it. This is all showing his deterioration and the fact that as he goes farther down this path toward discovering the number, he's like melting his own brain almost literally. Yeah. Did you figure it out?
No, I did not. Sorry. Can't find it. Don't know what it is. I think it being Hebrew is probably right in some way, because it's definitely not pi, which I assumed it was going to be. I don't know why I assumed that, but I was like, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, he's going to shave his head, and it's probably like pi is on his head, and ooh, that's weird. But I think that would be too much for this movie that does a lot of weird stuff, but never goes into kind of the absurd in that way.
Yeah.
But it's probably Hebrew, yeah. Or
I
maybe it's
know.
nothing. I don't know.
Maybe it's just like a vein. I mean, I think I just thought it was like a vein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so what else do we want to talk about here? I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this movie.
Yeah, I think you had a reading maybe that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of explore this idea of mental health and the ways in which this movie depicts mental health, because obviously Max is unwell. Beyond just the headaches, he's having delusions. He's seeing people that aren't there constantly, and I love the subway guy, the repetition of the subway guy, who you're never quite sure, right? Because the first time we see him, he starts singing randomly and then cuts out in the middle, like mid verse, and then he's the guy that he grabs the paper from later when he sees that the stock price has fallen. I love that repetition, but obviously he's delusional in some way. I think you could say schizophrenic, possibly.
I've read readings that like most of the stuff that happens in the movie is his delusions, and like the Hasidic Jews and the Wall Street people aren't even really there, and that's fine. I don't. That's not a reading that I would say I ascribe to, although I think that's probably there because it does get kind of unrealistic and ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to do that with movies. Like, I think sometimes there's a tendency of doing that whole like everything in the movie was all in the character's head, and I always hesitate to do that because I think that like is maybe a little overly simplistic. I mean, the movie confirms that some things are delusions, right? Like, there's the scene where he's with the neighbor, and that she's not actually there; she just disappears, right? So that is he's definitely delusional.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that everything that's happening to him.
Right.
And one of the reads, I was kind of thinking about this idea that like, so Max could just be this guy that is kind of like this kind of neuroatypical guy, and has this math ability, this ability to see numbers in a different way. And kind of what the movie is showing is how society, and I I hate using that word because it's like, this is about society, but how people will use those kind of people, these neuroatypical people who kind of see things a little bit differently and have the ability to, like, we see very quickly at the beginning of this movie, he can just do math in his head, like really complicated math in his head, no problem. And so through the Wall Street people, through the Hasidic Jews, we're seeing all these people that see this ability and just like want to capitalize on it. Like, they just want to use him. And I wonder if like that's like a larger metaphor for the way we use these people in our society, that like, I mean, I think and I'm kind of talking out my ass here, but there's books that I've not read but heard about talking about how like some of the advancements some of the biggest advancements that have ever happened, technological advancements, societal advancements, were done by people that possibly would be considered on the spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. And so like society takes these people and uses them, and in this movie they use him until he's almost entirely drained. Where like, because it's killing him, it's hurting him. This investigation, this exploration is destroying him. But none of the people around him care about that because they want what he has.
Right. I think maybe his mentor is sort of trying to shield him from this.
Right.
But unsuccessfully, because he's also a very obsessive personality who he wants this for his own ends, which is basically like enlightenment. Whereas everyone else wants it for some kind of more temporal purpose.
And I don't know if any of that's textual or not. It's just that was on my mind when I was thinking. I mean, I think the part of this movie that spoke most powerful to me is just the moments where he's just surrounded by these people that are like chasing after him and just like, we want what you have. Like this powerful pull of people that he's discovered this big important thing, and the first thing they want is to take it from him or take him and use him for their own ends.
Yeah. Well, I like that a lot, and I like to think about the parts of the film where so like the woman who's kind of the face of the finance group, and then the rabbi who he ends up talking to at the end, and I guess the guy who kind of keeps talking to him at the coffee shop. They begin, all three of these characters begin by presenting themselves super friendly and personable, saccharine almost. Like you the viewer can kind of detect that there's an edge of fakeness in I would say all three of these perhaps. And then as he continues to kind of resist them, they eventually completely break from that facade and attack him, scream at him and call him, names and so forth.
Yeah,
and
kind of kidnap him at one point.
They both
sides do.
They both try to kidnap him, and clearly, the woman is like, "I just want what's in your head. I don't care about you at all." Like explicitly saying what you were just saying. I think the rabbi is one where he actually seems like this warm fatherly presence, and then as soon as it's clear that Max isn't just going to give him what he's asking for, he becomes really indignant and angry, and it's a great moment of like revealing his true colors.
Yeah, and the image in the film where he's kind of surrounded by the rabbi and Lenny, the guy he met in the coffee shop, is in the background, and like I was really interested in that because like he's definitely one of the more friendly characters to him, and then he's kind of eerily silent when these people are surrounding him, like begging him for the information. He like doesn't have his back and is kind of silenced and pushed into the background. And I thought that was really interesting because it's like he was almost, it makes it clear that he was just like the errand boy. Like it was his job to go out and get him and bring him back here. And now he's pushed to the back. He's not even a part of this anymore.
Yeah,
and he's just going to stand there and watch as these people pressure you to give up this thing.
Yeah, he's been reprimanded, and then then he says nothing else for the rest of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that line. It's a great line.
Yeah.
All right. So what else do we got? I kind of like, there's a lot of aesthetic stuff I like, and I know we talked about that a lot, but Aronofsky really likes his insert shots, and the one that really worked on me, besides the door unlocking one, is the characters digging into the bowl of the go pieces, where it's just this really sudden insert shot to like, and it's like it's kind of like this greedy like scoop it out, and I think it's one of those things where I think the sound is probably mixed a little higher, so like the noise of grabbing the piece out of the bowl is just a little bit louder than it probably would be if you were just sitting there playing Go. For whatever reason, those moments to me like really like were powerful, and like it's just an image I couldn't get out of my head.
Yeah, I love that, and I also love the pills. And now that I juxtapose those, I sort of see go pieces and pills as being similar.
Yeah.
But that one cool thing about the pills is that, and this is beautiful visual storytelling, that like pretty much every time he shakes the pills into his hand, there's like one more pill than there was the last time.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Maybe 2 or 3 pills the first time, and then it's just like 8 by the end of the movie. And it's this great visual way of showing like things are getting worse. His attacks are getting worse. And the movie, other than like the one time when he says like two attacks in 24 hours, he doesn't really say like my attacks are getting worse and more frequent. It's you're purely expected to just understand that that's happening. And the little things like the pills, I think, absolutely accomplish that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's so many little touches like that throughout, of just these wonderful little insert shots. I just I don't know if I'm trying to see who edited this. I don't know if Aronofsky uses a similar editor throughout all his stuff, but everything has this kind of this fast but off rhythm to it that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, right. I mean, the that stuff definitely reminds me of Requiem for a Dream. I'd be shocked if it was a different editor. If it was a different editor, then it's clearly just him saying like, I want this very specific thing, this very specific feeling. And, cause he definitely achieves that in multiple movies.
Yeah. I'm trying to look up editor.
I just love the story. Like it's, it's rare that I feel like a story just fully succeeds in conveying something that's really this lofty. It reminds me a lot of the web serial Unsong, which I think you've heard of. I don't know.
I've never read it, but I've heard you talk about it before.
It's very like niche, but basically the premise of it is like the Kabbalah is basically the magic system of the world, and you can do basically magic by either saying various names of God to make various things happen, or if you're more advanced, then you just sort of like weave strands of words, which are also numbers, to do arithmetic to turn them into other words. So like I'm just going to completely like make it up or something. But like if you've got like the word for snake is represented by a 5, then you can like decompose it into a staff, and flame if you subtract the 2 or something. Like it's this very, very abstract and like sort of takes the implications of this system where numbers are letters and this is the fabric of reality, and then runs for 100,000 words with that. It's pretty fun, actually.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like what you're saying about just like there's a lot of just moments in this movie that are just kind of fun in the nerdy math stuff with like that. Like when he first explains how Hebrew converts to math and does the mother, father, child bit. That's just kind of fun to see someone like explain that out. And I think he uses these insert shots to sell that a little bit.
Yeah, that's fun. Like his explanation of the golden ratio is fun. They're just like very nice, concise, and entertaining little nuggets of like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then it moves on.
And it's like pop math, right? Where it's like, it's just like the high level, like anyone can understand the basic principle, but you kind of know that there's so much more beneath it. But it doesn't matter because you know enough.
I mean, I guess one thing that I'd say is I've taken a bunch of math, and I know a lot of mathematically advanced people who are more advanced than I am, and like what's kind of cool is nothing in this movie is dumb as hell. Like most of the time in a film that has like a math character in it, it'll just be really obvious that no one involved in the film knew anything about math. But in this, it's obvious that the people involved in writing and making the film did know what they were talking about, and this is all correct. It's all good. It's all above board.
Yeah, because I mean, there has to be something that Aronofsky wrote this film with the lead actor of the movie, I believe. They wrote it together, and so there has to be like obviously there was something about this idea, this concept, these mathematical concepts that fascinated them enough to craft this movie around it. So yeah, it is not just this thing that's kind of shoehorned in because like, wouldn't it be fun if it's like, no, this is actually important. And yeah, we're not going to dive deep into it. This isn't like this is the primer of math movies, but it is enough to make it like to where I think you, someone who is much more versed in mathematics than I am, get your enjoyment out of it, and I get my enjoyment out of it at seeing it as part of like a bigger metaphor and symbol for how do we find order in a world that is inherently chaotic.
Yeah, that's pretty perfect, honestly, because it's very hard to please both the highly picky math literate crowd and the hasn't taken that many math classes crowd at the same time. And the fact that this movie did it, I think, is really remarkable.
Yeah, I think this falls under a category of movie, and I'm not even sure what I would call it, that like maybe it's because it's a thriller, but it's not science fiction, but it isn't. I mean, I don't know how to classify it, but like it is not to me like a heady kind of impossible, impenetrable science fiction. I think this is a very watchable movie. It is uncomfortable. It is like difficult to watch at times just visually, but I don't think it's a tough movie to parse, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting space between like surrealism and science fiction, because I wouldn't fully call it surrealism, because the ideas that it's playing with are somewhat concrete,
Sure.
but also it's in this space where is it just a number that is an intrinsic property of the universe like pi, or is it a magical name of God?
Right.
Or are those two concepts the same thing?
Yeah, because it kind of flirts between those things, right? Because like there's this idea that no, this is just a number, and it's just a number that you'd plug into an equation, and once you do that, you kind of you just begin to be able to recognize patterns. But then it gets very surreal. Like I think the moment where he's just sitting there looking at the stock ticker and just like predicting. Like,
yeah,
he's not doing math at that point. Like he's not taking the number he found and plugging it into calculations. It's become like magic, basically.
Yeah, it's part of him. He just knows now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And yeah, I mean, I think what we talked about is like there are arguments to be seen that is all in his head, that is part of his delusion, that this never gets into any kind of actual literal surrealism. And then there's arguments that can say, no, that stuff totally happened. There is a magic number.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like I'm not going to tell anybody their reading is wrong. Certainly, there's just that I more enjoy taking the film more at face value.
Yeah.
I totally think that you could make the case that this is a movie about a guy's like paranoid schizophrenic breakdown, and that like there's no problem with that reading. It's just I enjoy that a lot less, honestly, personally.
I think it's I am fine with it as well. I think it's limiting because like it in order for that to work, I think it takes away a lot of the larger stuff that it's saying.
Yeah, it would basically require that you say like none of the themes were actually real. It was just a delusion, and it's like, oh well, okay. I like the themes though.
Yeah, that's true. So that's Pi. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about it? I guess we haven't talked about any of the actors. I thought the performances were really good for a low budget movie. Mark Margolis, who plays Saul, is what's his name from Breaking Bad? What's his name?
He's uncle, right?
Hector Salamanca.
Hector Salamanca. Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's Tico Salamanca. Yeah.
He's fantastic. He's also in
I forgot
Requiem.
I totally forgot that. I was like, I knew I recognized him. That's awesome. The main guy's name is Sean Gullette, and he's been in like nothing else.
He's a bit part in Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah. Very little that I would recognize.
Yeah. He's not, I mean, I think he's really good. I think, I don't know.
I found him very like relatable, and maybe that's just because I very much related to the headaches.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically you, Matt. This is why you love this movie.
Yeah, that's me staring at my computer, and my hand begins to shake.
Have you figured out the number yet, Matt?
Oh God, it's happening again.
All right, cool. I don't have anything else to say about Pi.
I love this movie. If people haven't seen this movie and are really confused by our conversation, I've always really liked this movie. It's not a movie that I want to like rewatch because it's so intense, but I do think this is a great movie.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it. I want to do a Deconstructing Director series on Aronofsky, so I'm going to add him to our short list.
Let's do it.
Maybe one time 3 years from now, we could do it.
Perfect.
All right, let's move on, and let's move from the movie we loved to the one that we didn't so much. Let's talk about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, for just a few minutes, Matt. We're not going to go too far. I don't want a whole half-hour conversation about this movie. But I want to talk to you about this movie because neither of us liked it. And I think we didn't like it in ways which are inherently interesting. So, I guess we should say this is going to be spoilers for the movie, right? We're probably going to talk about, because some of the stuff I hated is spoiler stuff. So, Matt, what'd you think?
I strongly disliked it.
I think you disliked it more than I did, and I think I told you when I walked out of it, I think I hate this movie.
Yeah. I was expecting to like it more than you, and after a relatively short length of the movie, I was like, first of all, I was like several times like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. And then I was like, I think I hate this. And I think I've had a few days to process now, and it's not that I don't still dislike the movie a lot. It's more like I've kind of relaxed.
Sure.
And I'm just like, okay, clearly Star Wars just means wildly different things to different people. Because I went with some people who liked the movie. I went with 2 adults who liked the movie, and then I went with my 2 kids who hadn't seen the movie and are sort of, they think Star Wars is like fine. They like the MCU much better. Mm-hmm. And they both said they liked the movie. And so I was like the only person in the group who was being a sourpuss. And that gave me a bit of like space to be like, is it valid to have this reaction? I think it is valid. But the point is, like, I anchored for basically my whole life on Star Wars being one kind of specific thing. And that's just not going to be what it is for everybody. And this movie was made for not me.
Yeah.
And it's fine that I hate it.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Like, the weird thing with me is, like, I disagree with every single story choice that this movie makes. And that's weird to say, because, like, disagree with, what does that mean? It means I just think you made dumb choices.
Yeah,
like, I think the journey you take the characters on is dumb and uninteresting. But the other weird thing is, I just, like, on top of that, entirely separate from that, I just think this is a poorly made movie. Like, I just don't, like, I don't think it's structured well. I don't think it moves well. I don't think its pace is good. I don't think any of the character beats set up and work. And it's probably my fault that I did this, but I felt myself comparing it to Avengers Endgame the entire time. And maybe it's because, like, and maybe that's Disney's fault, because they were building this movie as not just the end of this trilogy, but it's the end of the Skywalker saga. This is it. 42 years and 9 movies. It's all coming down to this. And it fails at accomplishing that. It fails as accomplishing a capstone of a trilogy. It fails at doing anything interesting with its characters at all. We have a lot of divisive opinions about The Last Jedi, even amongst, like, the members of this community. And I still, like, even if you don't like it, it's trying to do so much more with the characters. Like, right. I can't think of the arcs these characters go on in this movie. Like, where are they going? Where is Poe going?
Extremely muddled.
Where's Finn going?
Yeah, it's extremely muddled, and the characters are so muddy to me that I don't care about anything that's happening, and so I'm bored while being overwhelmed by visual stimulus, which is, like, the most unpleasant place to be in while you're watching a movie. Like, yeah. there was a time when I was watching this movie and I was just like, I want to leave. Like, I don't want to be here. I've got better things to do than, like, I'm already, like, we're halfway through the movie. It's not going to suddenly turn around and become great because I'm already pissed off at it for like, for just totally derailing from any kind of, like, narrative sensibility or coherence with the Star Wars universe, or any of the basic things that we've been led to believe about how this story works and what this story is and who these characters are. And I just want to leave. Of course I didn't. Story didn't get any better from there. In fact, it probably got worse. And I thought it was just god awful. And, you know, I feel like, I don't know, I don't want to, I'm trying not to say this in a way that's mean, because I don't mean it at all that way. But, like, I think if you liked this movie, then Star Wars must have always been basically just a kind of fun adventure to you. Because to me, Star Wars is supposed to be emotional and make me feel things.
Yeah.
And this movie made me feel nothing. I
don't even know if this is a good example of fun adventure, though. I really don't. Like, it's a MacGuffin chase, just an inert MacGuffin chase that I don't know what the characters' goals are. And I feel like in an adventure, like, besides just getting the next thing, what is your goal? What are you trying to do? And it's spending so much time kind of not, I mean, I don't want to go full conspiracy theory and be like J.J. Abrams was intentionally setting out to undo everything that Rian Johnson did. I don't know. I don't know the history of the production. I don't know what people said behind closed doors. I do think that the movie spends the first 45 minutes kind of, like, expositing out the ass to try to move things towards the movie this wants to be and away from the way the other movie ended. Whether or not that's an intentional fuck you to the previous director, I don't know. But I don't, there's none of this that is compelling on any way to me. Like I find, and I'm not even talking, like the editing to me is weird and flat. Like the lightsaber battles, which even when I am not enjoying a movie, I can usually be like, hey, they're doing cool flippies and banging swords against each other. That's kind of fun. I found those flat and uninteresting too. Like there's Kylo and Rey are fighting on top of the wreckage of a Death Star with waves crashing against them. And I was just like,
and you're bored.
Yeah. It wasn't engaging.
I don't, it's the classic, like, what are the stakes of that fight? I don't know. Mm-hmm. He clearly didn't want to kill her because he wasn't going for the kill.
Yeah.
What? I don't know. Like, what? Was she aggressively trying to murder him and then changed her mind? I just don't, I think this is a problem. Like, Rey as a character has never, like if I were to sit down and like try to like write fan fiction, I would have no idea where to begin with Rey because I do not know who she is. I've seen 3 movies of this character and I don't know who she is. I don't know what she wants. I know that the movie has told us a few times what she wants, but it hasn't been dramatized for me. And now we get to the conclusion, and that lack of grounding for this character, that lack of dramatic grounding has come to its fruition, which is, I don't care about what's happening, and I don't understand why she would do what she's doing. And
she's a Palpatine.
She's oh, that was so awful.
Yeah.
God.
So, I mean, I want to conclude on a couple things. I've been trying to get my head around some stuff because over the past 2 years, every time someone said to me, you know, Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi, like, intentionally says screw you to everything that J.J. Abrams was setting up. And then when this movie came out, it became, so J.J. saying screw you back. And I've never believed that, Matt. I've never believed that that's what happened. And maybe this is just my bias because I love The Last Jedi. I think it's a brilliant movie. I really, really like it. But to me, it was always, I looked, after these 2 movies, I looked at this trilogy and I said, oh, I see what they're doing here. It's a 3-beat that's exploring and moving Star Wars to what it's going to be from now on. And so you have Episode 7, the one that basically redid the first movie. That is Disney coming in and saying, establishing, okay, this is what Star Wars is. We're going to remake that movie, basically. This is what Star Wars is. Then Rian Johnson comes in The Last Jedi and says, okay, now that we've established what Star Wars is, we're going to examine that a little bit. We're going to say, look at this and say, okay, what parts of this do we still really need? And what parts of it can we get rid of? What parts of this huge, massive, multi-decade story can we take and push into the future, and what parts can we leave behind? I think that's an inherently fascinating examination. And then, to me, the third movie in that beat is then, okay, then we evolve. Then we take everything we learned in that 8th movie. We take all the little bits and pieces that are what new Star Wars is going to be. We've kind of moved beyond old Star Wars. And then Episode 9 then is the movie that is what Star Wars is now. And that is just not what they did. That's just not what they did at all. And so to me, like, this idea that it's just these directors kind of jockeying back and forth, changing what they want, I just didn't buy that because it seemed like this natural progression that we've abandoned in the 11th hour.
Yeah, I never thought that it was this feud between directors. Like, why would they allow that to happen? That's and also that just doesn't seem like who either of these guys are. I think it's just that they didn't plan this out at all. And you know, you kind of already mentioned the comparison to Endgame. Like, that was the whole MCU is like, in retrospect, viewed in its totality, this like incredible jewel, right? It's sure. Like it, and I've repeatedly said, like, I kind of wasn't impressed by it and was kind of like loudly bored of it until it suddenly won me over toward the end, and then I retroactively liked all of it all along because they had been building toward this thing, and I was like, oh, I get it. Like, now you've earned my trust, and now I believe that you knew what you were doing. This is the opposite, where they clearly did not have a plan. That there was nobody sitting there saying like, all right, we want to sketch out a character arc that goes over 3 movies. Nobody at any point did that. Not with Rey, not with Poe, not with Finn. They introduced the idea of a stormtrooper turned good guy. They don't know where they're going to go with that. They introduced the idea of lost girl on planet, no parents. We're going to parallel this to Luke, but we don't know what the answer is going to be. I'm J.J. Abrams. I don't come up with the answers. I'm a mystery box man, and that's a recipe for disaster. I mean,
well, here's my pushback on that. I don't think the MCU did that either. I think the job of writers is to retroactively make it look like we did that. Retroactively make it look like we had this plan all along. But I think the MCU pivoted and changed multiple times from movie 1 to movie 22. I think the most famous example of that is that in the first Thor movie, I think they show Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet in the vault.
Right.
And then later they were just like, nah, this is just a fake. And they made a joke out of it in Ragnarok. I like, because the original trilogy was not planned. Not really.
True.
I think the most planned trilogy is probably the prequels, to be honest with you.
Well, that's true. I think you may be right. I'm not willing to. So I think a lot of stuff in the MCU was like literally like they had a cork board and string, and they were like, this character has to go through this process and end up here, or this is not going to be satisfying. This is not going to work. And they're clearly keeping track of all kinds of details. And yes, there's probably a lot of like writers just cleverly yes-anding their way through things. But I think that's the key, is as writers in a continuing franchise, be it a movie franchise or a TV show, you really do have to yes-and your way through it. You have to say, oh, all right, let's look at the status quo. Now, what's the next thing that's going to happen that's going to be consistent with everything that happened before and moves the things forward in a way that is satisfying, and they could have done that, right?
Yeah.
That could have worked too. I think if he had just yes-anded the Last Jedi instead of like just grotesquely reversing all of these character choices, then that could have been an actual movie that we cared about. But no.
I agree. And I want to conclude on fan service.
Sure.
Because ever since our Avengers Endgame discussion, I've kind of just been wrestling with what is fan service, right? I think in that discussion we talked about, well, this is good fan service, but this is bad fan service. And I was like, well, what does that mean? What do these definitions mean? And when I walked out of this movie, I finally got it. I finally understood. I understand what fan service is. Fan service is when the movie does something that has no relevance to any of the characters, any of the plot. It is merely there for the people watching, sitting in front of the screen watching it. Because the end of this movie is Rey going to Tatooine and Rey burying 2 lightsabers, which have now become symbolic of the people that died, which doesn't make any sense.
Because it's their weapon.
Yeah, Luke's whole thing was that weapon, and that's not even his lightsaber. That was his dad's lightsaber. He killed children with that one.
Yeah, where's the green lightsaber?
Yeah. And then Leia's lightsaber, which is only established in this movie, and we have no emotional attachment to it at all, because it's like we just see it briefly in a flashback, and then whatever. She brings these lightsabers to Tatooine, a planet which Luke wanted to escape from, a planet which Leia's only interaction with is when she was a slave to a giant slug, and a planet which Rey has never been to at all, ever. Just for this poetic rhyming moment where we end the movie where the first movie began, on Tatooine looking out at the suns. And that is fan service, because character-wise, none of these beats make any sense. It doesn't make sense that we would end the movie on Rey alone when Rey's whole thing if you want to call what her arc is across these 3 movies an arc, her whole thing is this desire to not be alone. Her whole thing is this desire to be important to people. So having her alone on a desert planet as we conclude the movie. No, she's not alone. She's got 2 ghost friends that are in the background.
It's great.
None of it doesn't matter to any of the characters. And I think the way to do good fan service, quote unquote, is you can still build those moments in, but also make them matter to the plot and matter to the characters that they're doing them. Why is this person doing this thing that is clearly just for people in the audience to get excited about? Well, they have an in-story reason. Or they have a character reason. They have it goes around their wants and their needs. It is not just let's do this because people in the audience are going to like it. And that's so much of what this movie is.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like that's the kind of movement that the kind of moment rather that almost could have worked if I had been bought into the movie up until that point, and I could have forgiven it. Rather, I don't know if it would have worked so much as I would have just been like whatever. I agree with you though that like stuff like that and like Chewie's medal, you're just like, okay, I get it. This is the filmmaker turning toward the camera and looking at me and saying, "You like this?
Yeah,
huh?" And
those aren't. Like, I agree with you that those problems are not like this. That is why the movie is bad, but they are systemic.
Yes.
To the overall approach to the film.
Yeah. Well, so I know you said you wanted to wrap up. I wanted to get off my chest like what I feel is kind of a microcosm or a linchpin for me. I don't want to say like this was the moment the movie lost me, because that makes me sound so shallow and superficial, but it was the light speed skipping actually, where I was like, when they did that, I was like, oh, these people don't care about Star Wars at all. Because this is one of the first things that was ever established, is that light speed is like very dangerous. You have to plan it out like with a computer, and you have to like get away from all the objects. You definitely we have to get outside of this asteroid field so we can like so many like multiple movies plots hinge on the fact that you can't just turn on your hyperdrive when you're in a planet's atmosphere. And then they're just doing this, and then the TIE fighters are following them, and TIE fighters don't have hyperdrives. This is established. It's also like established in the first movie, and you're just like, okay, I get it. You people, you haven't watched Star Wars. You don't care about it. This is not for me, a person who had like the encyclopedia of Star Wars as a child, and now you've kind of lost me. And I know that makes me sound like the type of person who fixates on this minutia when actually that's not true. I want to care about the characters, but it was such a just like stupid like J.J. Abrams moment of like planets being like 15 seconds away from each other in different solar systems and so forth. The kind of stupid shit he does all the time in like the Star Trek movies that I was just like, okay, I'm out. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think that's a completely valid way to feel. I don't care about those things, but I get it. I totally get it. And I think I know you, and I know the type of person you are, and I know that if the movie was working on you on an emotional and character level, you wouldn't be making those complaints.
Yeah, I probably would have thought of some excuse. Probably would have been like, oh yeah, but these are like new TIE fighters, so they can do that, whatever.
Yeah, I mean invariably that's the excuse, right? Like,
yeah,
and you can easily do that. You're just like, no, they're new. We put a thing in there.
Yeah, right. So I guess it's not even really true for me to say that that's the moment the movie lost me. I think that might have been the moment when I realized that the movie had already lost me.
Yeah, I think the movie lost me when there's this beautiful, beautiful scene where Rey kills Chewbacca, and I was like, holy shit, they're doing something here. That like I no kidding. I thought that was a great scene. I thought it was shot well. I thought like having Rey on one side, Kylo on the other side, and they J.J. Abrams goes to this long shot where you can see both of them in frame, and I think you can see the transport in frame too, and they're just battling, pushing back and forth, and then like the shocking moment where the lightning shoots out of her hand, and you're just like, holy shit, she just killed Chewbacca. And I was like, oh, I get where they're going with this. Like, she's going to be really challenged, and that is going to matter and kind of darken her because she feels the guilt and responsibility of doing this. And no, the movie's not interested in that at all. It undoes it for us, the audience, like 30 seconds later. And then we never really see Rey's emotional... We never really see the emotional consequence of that in her. It doesn't seem... Like, we move to the next scene, and it doesn't seem to matter anymore. You just killed Chewie.
It doesn't matter to Rey, and it doesn't... And then the fact that he's dead is immediately reversed.
Yeah.
And it's just like a big fat nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm fine if you reverse deaths. Like I movies do that all the time. They do the fake outs. This movie does it like more than any movie I've ever seen. I'm fine not killing Chewbacca. That's fine. But let that moment breathe a little bit. Let your character feel what they've done and let it alter the ways in which they move forward. Let it alter her choices. Like if I'm Rey and I just killed Chewbacca, I feel like I'm going to distance myself from everyone else. I don't want to be around you people anymore because they're going to probably kill you. Or what have I done? Have I gone too far? Have I gone too far down this path? What happens now? Where do I belong now in that I've just killed one of my friends? And it's just, no, none of that. None of that's there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and this isn't a fully original thought of mine, but I think that JJ just has this problem where I'm almost going to rip off somebody else's words in how I say this, but like he's so afraid of the audience getting bored that he doesn't give them a second to process emotions or to have any space for like internalizing the drama of what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of the Star Trek Into Darkness scene where Kirk, quote unquote, dies, and it's just like the emotional reaction of Spock is so like sped through, and then the death is reversed as quickly as possible, and it's just like, okay, I didn't the scene in the original movie was gutting, and you have taken that and you have mimicked the trappings of it and then retained none of the power of it, and that's kind of what he always does with big moments that should be really emotional.
Yeah, and there's I think one of the things that frustrates me about this movie is I can kind of see the good movie like in bits and pieces. Like there's this movement for Rey where like at the very beginning of the movie, she's training and she accidentally like chops a tree in half and it lands on BB-8 and she hurts BB-8. And BB-8's her friend. And then she's really snarky with Poe about it later, and I think that's maybe establishing something. Also, the snark between Poe and Rey in that first scene is excellent, and then they immediately dropped it after that. And I was like, oh my god, their back and forth all movie will be excellent, and then that doesn't ever happen. But anyway, You've established this thing where she's like tendency to kind of fly off the handle a bit, and that hurts her friends. And then you reinforce that with her killing of Chewbacca. There's a chance that you can set up a really interesting payoff at the end of that, and it just doesn't do it. And I saw little bits and pieces of brilliance in this movie, and I think the every one of like the galaxy of starships appearing suddenly being led by Lando was a moment that like it almost made my heart flutter a little bit. Like it almost worked on me. I almost felt emotional in that moment, but it just wasn't established, so I didn't get there. Like I compare that to the portal scene in Endgame, right?
Yeah.
The on your left scene where it's this culmination of everything they've been working towards for the whole movie is getting these people back, and this is them arriving, and it's this wonderful moment. And Star Wars tries to do that here, but who are these people? Why are they coming? How did they get there? Like
we don't see any of their faces. They're not characters.
Right. We don't see any of their faces. We don't ever see them actually fight in the battle. Like it immediately goes back to X-Wings and the Millennium Falcon fighting. Like we don't see any of these random ships doing the fighting. There's no attachment there. Like if this had been a movie about like flying around and recruiting people to join the Resistance, and this was the payoff is like they're all finally here, that moment would have worked. But that's not the movie it was.
No, that scene actually made me angry because I was like, you didn't earn this.
Yeah.
Like you have to earn the on your left moment movie.
Yeah.
And you have very this is one of those instances where I feel comfortable using the word contrived, where it's like, yeah, I know you wanted to have this moment and you wanted it to be awesome and you didn't earn it, and so I'm not gonna like I'm just mad now because of how transparent this was. It's just really, really bad storytelling.
And then Poe says, you did it, Lando. And I'm like, what? What'd he do? Was he going to do something? What?
I don't know. I think the reason why we get so annoyed with this, like, it doesn't have that much to do with like the fact that that I love Star Wars, because I don't think I love Star Wars all that much. It's more like I hate wasted opportunities.
Yeah.
And this could have been such a great movie. It really could have.
Yeah.
It should have even.
I remained optimistic and hopeful till the very end. I did. There was a lot of talk, like, especially when JJ got brought back on board. They were like, "Oh shit," and I was trying to be like, "No, like it could be great. It could be awesome." Like, I'm with you in that I don't like love Star Wars in that way. I know we've just spent like 30 minutes talking about it when we said it was going to be short, but I just felt like there's a chance here to do something really, really interesting. And do something maybe not even interesting. Like, I don't think the movies need to be interesting to be good. Like, that's a weird way of saying that. Like, I don't think the movies need to be like this whole new challenging thing to be good, right?
I mean,
I just want something that is well crafted and emotional. I want to feel like I wanted to be moved to tears by the on your left moment in this movie. Like, that is, if every movie makes me feel the way that Endgame made me feel in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in love. But I wanted that so bad. And I felt like they were just, if they just done something, just not like huge differences, but just establish this moment, like build to it just a little bit. It could have maybe gotten there.
Well, I guess the way I would say it is like, I do love a movie that challenges me and pushes my expectations the way The Last Jedi did. Yeah. But I also love a movie that just perfectly executes on a formula, like, or just perfectly executes on a simple adventure story. Like Pirates of the Caribbean is such a fun movie, and there's not a like subversive, twisty element in that movie. It's just a fun adventure. Just make a fun adventure movie. Like, and that's the thing, is this movie is, like you said earlier, this movie's neither a fun adventure movie nor is it doing anything particularly interesting or novel. It's just chaos. And that's a shame. Yeah.
It's like, we got to find the number that brings order to this chaos.
Yes. It's 214 digits, I hear.
216.
God damn it.
All right, well, that is it for our mini review that turned into a full review. To end on a good note, that yellow lightsaber looked cool.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that was it had been part of her staff. So
yeah. She just had that at the beginning of the movie. That would have been cool.
You know what would have been cooler is if I cared.
I was trying to end on a positive note.
Oh, yeah, he's really cool. I like,
Yeah. Stars are cool. Okay, that's all we had for you guys this week. If you have any opinions on The Rise of Skywalker, which you surely do, or more importantly, on the movie we reviewed in the main segment today, Pi, or Darren Aronofsky's filmography. I don't know why I paused between the phrase and that word. Darren Aronofsky's filmography. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on our Twitter account @doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, then we encourage you to do so, and you'll never miss an episode. You can find the Doofcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find all of our other shows at doofmedia.com. If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia, pledge from a wide variety of levels. The level that gets us to talk about Pi, as Youssef did today, is Matt, remind me, $20. The $20 level. $20 level gets you to pick a movie or a television show. No, not a television show. A movie or a short story for us to talk about and do a whole episode on, which we did today. So thank you, Youssef, for pledging to us and allowing me to finally sit down and watch this movie that I thought I had already, but I didn't.
Youssef actually gave us a couple of options, and so in a sense, our patrons voted and picked this movie, and the other option was, I think, The Holy Mountain by Jodorowsky, which I want to watch that movie at some point. Also,
we should just do that as like a bonus episode someday. That
would be cool. Yeah.
But thank you so much to Youssef and to all of our patrons. We really appreciate you guys. Each and every buck that you send our way goes right back into our company. We've got it's a new year. It's a new year, Matt. It's 2020, and we've got a lot of plans for this year, and you guys are making all that possible.
Yeah, and it's really going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to some of the stuff we have lined up.
Me too.
So yeah, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the stuff that we're doing here.
All right, guys, we will see you next week when we are going to begin our new Deconstructing Director series. I don't know what director we're doing on yet, because there is a vote going on. If you are a patron of Doof Media, you can go vote right now on which director you want us to cover. We've got 4 different choices up there on a poll on Patreon, and we're letting our patrons pick who we're doing next. So we won't know until tomorrow who it's going to be, but we're going to begin the first movie of whichever director that is next week. So we'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.